It is just a huge honor for me to be podcast interviewing Steve Anderson, who I've known for basically since 1987. He actually has done my own office, remodeled it, but he's Steve Anderson. He's the president of Denco Dental Construction and author of DentalEase, the essential guide to building the stress-free and profitable dental practice of your dreams. When does that book come out on Amazon?
It's not going to be on Amazon. I'm going to self-publish, and it's going to print next week.
Nice. Because I was a big fan of your earlier book, A Dentist's Blueprint to Success, the step-by-step process to owning your own dental office and making your dream a reality, by Steve Anderson. So then that book's on Amazon. Is that book on Amazon? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That one's on Amazon. On Amazon, it says, with a dentist's blueprint to success, the step-by-step processing to own your own dental office and making your dream a reality, author Steve Anderson takes the reader through a masterclass of what it takes to make your dental office dreams a reality, starting with planning and evaluating your needs and desires and continuing through all the way through opening day. A dentist's blueprint to success provides expert guidance for each step along the way. Using the included worksheets and checklists, you'll be able to make informed and expert decisions whether you're considering a remodel or are you building from the ground up. Gathered from his decades of dental office construction experience, Steve Anderson has literally written the book on what you need to know when it comes to making your dental office dreams come true. So for over 30 years, Steve and his company Denco Dental Construction have been making dreams a reality as the only general contractor specializing in dental offices endorsed by the Arizona State Dental Association. A strong believer in giving back to the community, Steve created a dentist blueprint to success to help ground-up dentists. He's a regular guest lecturer at Arizona Dental Schools, A.T. Still University, Midwestern University, and A.T. Still University is also the Arizona School of Dental Health. That's the one Jack Dillman started. And then Midwestern University. Steve detailed everything you need to know. You've done this. You've done over 1,000 dental offices in 30 years, Steve. I would know of anybody who would know as much as you know. So I just want to, I want to start this. I'm not worried about old guys like you and me. I'm worried about the COVID class of 2020. We just had 6,500 dental students walk out of dental school a month ago.
Yeah.
And I think the old bulls in the barn should be worried about these new calves that just got out of dental kindergarten school. And this is just the craziest time. I mean, you start to have an economic peak a year before the pandemic. Remember, you got to go back a year before the pandemic. Warren Buffett hadn't bought anything for a year and was sitting on $140 billion in cash because the value of all the stocks was worth more than the GDP. So the global GDP is $78 trillion. The American GDP is $19 trillion. And Warren Buffett taught me in person in 1980 when I went to Creighton University in Omaha. He came over and he lectured to our class, and he says when all the stocks are worth more than the country, the stocks of the companies from your country are worth more than the country's GDP, it's overvalued. And so going into this pandemic, the stocks are worth about 125% of the economy, and Warren thought they should be worth 75% of the economy. Then we have the pandemic, and then all hell broke loose, and then we have oh my gosh, everything. We have racial tensions. We have a presidential election. So my first starting advice, you've been in here 30 years, the kids at A.T. Still and Midwestern calling me with this exact question. Howard, before the pandemic, I was going to come out. I was going to build my own office. I was going to come out, and I was already planning on buying Old Man Blues practice.
Yeah.
And a guy called me yesterday, and we talked for an hour. What would you tell a kid that just walked out of A.T. Still, who, you got to remember, the election's in 5 months. 5 months ago, we didn't know anything was about to happen. We didn't know 5 months ago that.
That's right.
So when people tell me that they know what's going to happen in the election in 5 months, I'm like, where were you 5 months ago to tell me about COVID-19? So nobody can predict the future. But man, you got 3 kids. What would you tell your own daughter if she just walked out of A.T. Still with a dental degree last month? What advice would you give her right now?
First is just understand that dentistry is really solid. It's amazing to me how resilient they are. I'm very proud of how they've come around, and I've checked on clients and just creatively looking for answers and being ahead of the curve and really seeking out ways to make it happen. And that's the one thing is I tell all students when I teach and at Midwestern, AT Stills, et cetera, is basically 98% of you, maybe 99% of you should go work for someone else first, period. And the primary reason is there's too much to learn, there's skills to hone, there's debt to pay down, but more importantly is honing your skills and then seeking that opportunity to really understand what goes into dentistry. And it's so much more than being in the mouth. It's understanding all the dynamics of business. It's understanding what will make you successful. And one of the tidbits I give them is, the smartphones are great. They have a little place called Notes. And I said, keep your pros and your cons, and you see what works for HR, and you see what works for taking care of patients, and how to sell better, and little things they can learn from their peers, and take all that information. And then when you really you're up to speed, then it's time to start looking to do your own. But I very rarely in an office. I'm seeing graduates that there might be 1 in 100 that really are ready to go out and just go at it.
Yeah, you need to get your skill set in. And the COVID class of 2020, their last semester of clinic was on Zoom. So that yeah. So yeah, it sounds silly when you're 58, but when you come out of school, giving a block is hard, and you don't get them all. Pulling a simple molar is hard. Simple endos. So it's nice. When I got here in '87, do you remember Ed Silker, the dentist that owned Sunshine Dental? He was from Minnesota. Anyway, he was old when I got here, and he had 4 practices, north, south, east, and west, and his offices were open 7 to 7, 7 days a week. So when mine was being built for 4 months, I worked at downtown 7 to 1, 7 days a week, and then in Glendale 1 to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And I was doing my dental school requirements every week. We had to do 50 fillings, 15 canals of endo, 15 units of denture, and I was doing that every week. And right. I remember at the end of the first week, I was just like, oh my God, I doubled my requirements. And it just takes a couple years before you can just sit down and not worry about giving a block, doing a crown prep, having everything, just your basic. It's like if you're going to play football, let's get down a pass, a catch, a block, a tackle. Let's get those 4 things down really good, because Absolutely. If you don't do it, then you'll have to go play for the Steelers or some low-class team. You'll never make it on the Cardinals. You've done 1,000 offices. How many of these were land, building, dental ranch farm versus I'm renting in retail and you're going to remodel a rental place? Because Great. The first question they're going to ask, the first question they've always asked, you always see the same questions with all the graduates. Should I rent or should I own? How do you wrap your mind around that answer?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the issue on how many offices have been ground up, maybe a dozen. I specialize in tenant improvement, remodeling, and things of that nature. And that's where about a dozen years ago, I said no to to doing ground ups. And with the premise of, I want to be the best at what I do. I want to understand what I do and do it extremely well. And if I can't, then I need to move on. And with ground ups, there's so many continued variables. And in the valley alone, there's over 23 municipalities. And then you go into different areas of the state and country that have different code requirements and thereabouts. But back to the question of students, do I buy, or do my first office, do I buy? In my book, I have a couple pages I talk about that, and in a nutshell, I tell them ideally for probably 70% of the dentists, unless you got a really smoking deal with extra square footage and it gives you a lot of flexibility down the road, is rent your first time. And the primary reason is you're still learning your skill set. You're still trying to understand. And one of the biggest mistakes and the regrets I see for dentists when they get out there is they come back and talk to me in 3-4 years and go, okay, I bought a 1,400 square foot building. I can't expand. I can't do anything. What do I do? And it just creates a whole nother dialogue and a whole other, some additional problems. So by understanding and continually getting your own practice, and yeah, it's an investment, but it's the long term. I have an office we put $40,000 into remodeling an old dental office. Then we turned around 3 years later and put him into a new tenant improvement right behind him. And then a few years later, he said, hey, my school debt's paid off. What do I do? And I said, let's go buy that piece of land behind you. And then let's talk in a couple of years. And then a couple of years went by and he says, what do I do, Steve? And I said, you know what, go down the street and buy that building, because you're not going to find a 5,000 square foot building and I can't build it for what they're selling it. And I ended up doing a tenant improvement for him and finished it out. And it's gone extremely well. So every situation is unique.
So when did you write your first book? When did you write A Dentist's Blueprint to Success, the step-by-step process to owning your own dental office and making your dream a reality?
Well, guess what happened in 2008?
Lehman Brothers.
Well, so up to that point, I chose to specialize in 97. And what was interesting is as soon as I made that, I had that vision on mind. The vision was I wanted to write a book. I wanted to teach at the schools. And one of the commitments I made is every time I teach at the schools, they get a copy of the book for free. But what's interesting is, so I started compiling this information. Well, my compilation was 4 or 5 feet tall, literally in the corner of my office. And I'm going, I'm never going to have a time, because we all know what it was like in 2006, 7, and it was just busting at the seams. Well, in the process of that, what I did is 2008 happened, and I'm going, okay, so what now? What? Time to look around. And I did seminars for how to put a skip back in your step, because so many of the dentists were putting their head in the sand, and just helping them look at the bigger picture. And so what I did is also at that time, I went ahead and compiled all that information down to a 100-page book and put it in little brain teasers and bullet points. And that's how I think. And I made it an easy read for dentists and for their success.
So it came out in 2008, Kyle. Where?
It was the first book was actually a compilation, and we didn't put it on Amazon until a few years ago.
Okay, so you put it on Amazon in 2017.
Yes. For the first few years, what I did is I compiled and just did a self thing at Staples and made a binder out of it, more or less. And then I kept refining it and refining it and refining it. And then finally, when I went to publish it, I ended up hired a guy to help me do the graphics and all that stuff.
Huh? And you only have 5-star reviews. I mean, that's where's the here's one of your reviews. As a professional that services the dental industry, I found this book to be full of valuable and insightful information. Steve's experience and understanding of the dental industry is clearly communicated through this entire blueprint. If the reader takes the information to heart and follows the process outlined, they will more than likely have a smooth process. So what is you have 3 kids. I have 4 kids. I've always said that writing a book's like having a kid. I mean, it takes 9 months, 9 months of work. So what after your first book, this Dentist's Blueprint to Success, what made you want to write a second book, DentalEase, the essential buying guide to the stress-free and profitable dental practice of your dreams?
Just continuing hearing and seeing dentists speak of the pain that they go through, being sold things that they don't need, being told things that aren't real, being given poor advice, all those kind of things. And then the encouragement of clients that I shared my first book with, they go, well, what about all those other things you tell us about, whether it's at class or a continuing ed or whatever it might be, and all the stuff that you shared with us during the process, put it in a narrative. And I'm going, oh, that sounds nice, but trying to take what's up here and put it onto the pin, oh my gosh, that was painful. And but I've had clients call my first book their Bible. They just use it as a process to be able to go through, and it just takes the stress off. And I'm going, okay, so how can I make it better? And it's putting that narrative to it. And it's just, and then also I updated and added forms, and I also added some new processes, and we had a few things like the COVID-19. I was going to the press 3 months ago, and right when all this hit, and when that happened, I paused and I said, okay, let's kind of see what's going on. And I sought that opportunity to add some additional updated forms that I have, and then I also ended up taking and updating the new codes, because we're having the new sedation form code is being applied by most of the municipalities now, and then naturally the virus and how that affects design. How does that affect all the your air purification systems and so on and so forth? And there's just such a vast, just trying to keep up with it is a challenge.
No, man. Well, it's funny you said that Dennis said that he considers it the Bible, because the Bible takes its name from Greek to Biblia, the books, traced to the Phoenician port city at Gabal. So you're in Phoenix. Of course you wrote the Bible on this book, because Bible basically just means book. I've been hearing a lot of people say that, by the way, when the new book comes out, DentalEase, The Essential Guide to Building the Stress-Free and Profitable Dental Practice, which website is that going to be sold on? Is it going to be Denco Dental? Is it going to be dreamdentalpractice.net? Is it going to be Dental Blueprints for?
It's going to be dreamdentalpractice.net.
And not on Denco Dental?
No, I just treated it totally independent of itself, and basically I came up with that because Dream Dental Practice says it all. And because really that's what it's about. Everybody has a vision in their mind. And the challenge is so many times I see that dream, that target, that goal miss so badly. And that's where dreamdentalpractice.net. And the idea is network. It's going to be a fluid thing, no different than dentistry. Dentistry continually to change. And that's what this book does.
So it's going to be at dentalblueprintforsuccess.com. No, that's not right.
No, dreamdentalpractice.net.
Okay, well, so the other one was your dentalblueprintforsuccess.com. That was for your first book.
Right.
Amazon are your first book, but I understand probably rather do it yourself than go through Amazon. I sell books through Amazon. It's always better to control your own destiny. So your first book was on dentalblueprintsforsuccess.com, and your new book next week will be at dreamdentalpractice.net.
Right. And it's
okay. So my goal. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Actually, right now we have the landing page, the website up and running, and if they want, people can go on the website and get as a gift to anyone that goes on the site, they can get the first chapter for free.
All right. And you just sent me the copy. That's a good looking picture, man. I love that picture. So basically, here's what we're looking at. We're looking at this is this virus is, it's an old rodeo for me. The first AIDS was breaking out in 1979 in the United States. I got out of school in 1987. You're not going to believe this, but when I got here in 1987, the oldest, coolest dentist who I just loved, he used his cuspidor as an ashtray. And he thought us young whippersnappers wearing gloves and not allowing our patients to smoke, not only in the waiting room, but in the damn operatory. He was just, but he was in North Scottsdale. You probably know him. He was the old curly-haired guy. And he was so busy because if you were an 80-year-old Scottsdale woman with, a widow with a bunch of money, where's the only dental office where you could go and still smoke in the operatory? There was one guy, and he had the market on 80-year-old millionaire women who wanted to smoke in the operatory. But the AIDS was coming out, and I remember everybody saying back then about universal precautions, that we don't know who has AIDS or doesn't have AIDS. We don't know who's testing positive to COVID, asymptomatic. We don't know anything. We just assume everybody's a carrier. So we've been making all these changes. Like I started off with the customers. I almost cried when you came in and took out my cuspidors. I mean, watching the customers go down the street, it was like, watching your boat sink. I love those cuspidors.
You do know everyone east of the Mississippi still uses cuspidors, or most of the people.
Okay, I'm calling U-Haul right now, and I'm moving my practice. And then another thing they don't realize, when SARS came out in 2012. Well, Boeing figured that out. All the new airplanes built after that, they don't recirculate the air. They recirculate it out. But it's like when you take a cruise. Luckily for me, the first cruise I took, I kept saying to myself, how old is this boat? And the lady told me, she goes, rule number one on a cruise is always find out when your boat was made. So since that time on, every cruise I've ever taken, the boat's only been like 1 to 3 years old. So we got rid of the cuspidors. We got rid of having city water come into the handpiece, and we put the little bottles in there. So we've been making all these incremental improvements. But I remember when AIDS came out, people said, remember, when this AIDS pandemic passes, and here it's still going on 40 years later, but don't do anything out of panic. Realize that all universal precautions you're going to keep for life. So now people are, when I tell people I was going to podcast you, they're so excited. They're like, okay, ask them, should I have a negative air pressure room? Should I have UV lights on? So I know everybody's in panic mode. And I know we're only into month 5. I think the epidemiologists at ASU, where I went and got my MBA, they're saying they think that we'll have a second hump in the fall, and it'll be bigger than the first hump.
I think so too. Yeah.
And then 2021, it'll fade away. So 2022, it's gone. So my question to you specifically is, what will I still be using in 2022 that is for good versus some panic UV light over my head, which I can't have because I have a bald head. I can't get skin cancer on the top of my bald head to kill a COVID. But what are you doing differently? If you're doing a remodel today, what COVID stuff are you doing today that you weren't doing pre-pandemic?
The biggest single thing is just making sure that you have outlets on the side for additional mobile devices. Some of those suction devices that they have some very slick portable units that will not only go through a HEPA filter, but also UV light and push the air back out into the room. But the biggest single thing is not to get carried away and spend an incredible amount of money that won't serve you well. Trying to create a negative air pressure and trying to create something like you're going to do in a surgery op. We do surgical build outs, and nobody wants to spend that kind of money that you need to do to accomplish that. Plus, they don't have the room to do all those things. The big thing is dentists already do all the hands, the gloves, the shields, and that's the biggest thing. Then next is having initially maybe just a portable fans, or using those HEPA fans or something in the room, because research has shown that you take and put air into that fan, it doesn't matter where it sits in the room, it will recirculate that air, and it will help in the process. I had an office, several offices going, and they were talking about redoing the entire ductwork system, and we had a specialist come in, and they told us everything that we should be doing. And at the end of that, I'm kind of going, so they're going to be adding all this extra ductwork. We're going to be doing all these extra modifications. And by the time it's said and done, we're going to spend an extra $25,000 of your money. And what are we going to have for it? We're going to have a system in which you're going to be pulling up through the ductwork all the contaminants, the particulates, and then you've got the issue of HEPA filters and then changing them and all these other things. And so really right now for what it is, I'm really a fan of the portable units, and something like what we're going to put in your office next week is just a portable plexiglass divider to be able to, so you allow guests in your studio. It's just common sense type things.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but I've always had a lot of patients that actually fly in to see me from other cities. Of course, they're all have a last name Ferran, expecting free dentistry, room and board, and food while their dentistry's done. But we're trying to get it ready for our out of state guests. Are you sensing what are since the pandemic broke? I mean, we're all individuals, but this is what you do. What would you say is the top major questions that dentists are calling you up saying, Steve, do I need to have you come in and do this because of the COVID-19?
The biggest single thing is when on the internet they were talking about negative air pressure. That's the biggest thing that hit first, and then it was what do I do about the air exchange? What do I do about taking care of my patients? And then also in the new offices, seating, is going to be important. So when they have larger offices, we're recommending having two doors rather than double doors or a single door, having two doors split a little bit so you have an in and out door more. And just simple little things like that. A lot of it.
Did you steal that idea from In-N-Out Burger?
No.
That was your original, okay. So negative air pressure, which you're not a big fan of.
No.
And succinctly, the talking point on that, why are you against negative? And the only reason I'm asking is because, there's big dudes like oral surgeons like, Jay Resnick. Lots of people are talking about this, but what would you tell Jay Resnick why you're not a big fan of negative air pressure?
Well, to do it properly, we're talking a huge investment, and also how do you have to be a specialist in the field of mechanical to fully understand everything and the consequences of every decision. Every decision has a consequence. And so also, besides that, a lot of offices don't have the room electrically or above the ceiling for these additional devices that we're doing. One office that wanted to put in a whole new system to deal with the better airflow and HEPA system, everything. They're going to need to add 3 or 4 circuits to the process, and they didn't have that kind of room in their electrical panel for it. And that's some of the simple things that, before people start spending a bunch of money, they need to check out what they're looking at. Even in the portable units, there's some that actually require a dedicated 110 and a dedicated 220, where really there's also a system out there that is just, you plug it in, and it's one of those suctions that go right by the mouth. And what's sweet about that, it vacates the air and the particulates out of the area. But understanding every office is unique, and some of the office designs to go in and say that I'm going to do a negative air can be had as simply as putting in an exhaust fan and moving air out. Well, the problem with that is if you take and you're exhausting air, your air-conditioned air, and you're sucking it out and putting it outside the building, you got a problem. The problem is you have to end up supporting and taking care of replacing that cold air, especially in Arizona. Arizona is one of those states that we get hot. And it just definitely would not work for us, because you'd end up having to add an extra air conditioner just for the makeup air. No different than like what a makeup air that you put in a kitchen for a commercial restaurant is. They have an air conditioner and a cooler extra just to make up the air that's being exhausted out of the building.
I never could understand in Arizona when it's 110 outside. You go to these, what is it, hibachi restaurants where they cook at the table? And they have this massive, massive vent above the grill sucking air out. And I'm like, oh, my God, it's nice and 70 degrees inside. I know it's 110 outside. That's 40 degrees different, and you're
Yeah.
sucking sounds like a cubic yard of air per second
Yeah.
right out of the roof. It's like,
So
how do you?
you take an office like a restaurant like that without that exhaust system, and they didn't have that exhaust going, they could get by with maybe 10 tons of air, but they have to go to 15, maybe even 20 tons just to deal with all that, And
Yeah.
you think of your utility bills, you think of all those things.
Yeah, it just is crazy. Okay, what about and I know I've asked you this, and you talked about it, but I'm just trying to get it more succinct and rolled out again. But one of my best friends is installing UV lights all over the ceiling to kill the coronavirus.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
That's a real popular thing, a trend right now. It's I've actually one of those that have ordered one with the idea of checking it out before I recommend it. It looks great. It sounds great. I have some questions in my mind about the system, thinking, okay, so if it's how do you clean it? How does it maintain? You got air moving through one side of the light and exiting on the other, and it's going through a filter, it's going through a UV light above a light. You can have a light or non-lighted device like that. So
Yeah,
it's just, there's just and that's the thing, is just trying to stay up with all the new systems that are continually being offered right now. But with those indirect lights, the UV lights are actually above the ceiling and not pointed down. They're dealing with the air that's going through and across the light.
Oh, okay.
The UV light. That's what I understand. It's not a UV light that shines down. It's one that's within the mechanism, within the box of the light. So they actually have one with a light that shines down, and they have one without a light that shines down, and they just have an input and an exit light.
I got to ask you, and maybe you've told me in the past, because I've seen you at the Arizona Dental Society conventions for years. I've seen you in my own office. How did you end up in dentistry? How did this journey start? Did you get lost? Did you fall down and?
Actually, what's interesting is I got started by a phone call from my uncle. And I was living in Iowa, and he says, hey, I've got an opportunity to get in construction down here and learn the trade and trim carpentry. What do you think? And that was probably, back then I had one wise moment, and I said, give me a week. And what I did is I took a week, and I listened to my friends. I interviewed them, basically. I took them all out, and I really evaluated where I was, where I'm headed, and what I was doing. And I'm going, okay, I'm going nowhere. I have no real future here, and I'm going to end up a drunk uptown. And I said, I've got to do something different. And I said, what the heck? So I packed up everything I owned, and off I went in my Nova hatchback and went to Arizona. And in the process of that, I realized that I went to work in construction, and then I ended up getting started in business with the help of a general contractor I was working for. And after a while, I'm kind of going, okay, I'm tired of just being everything to everyone and not having any value. And so in the process of that, what I did is I was driving to work one morning, and I'm going, who needs help? And I thought back of the dentist offices I've done, and several in mine really came to mind. Like, I'd doing a walkthrough with an office, and we just finished it, and he opens up the door and goes, good God, that's beautiful. What is that? And I said, well, that's your mop sink. And he starts getting red, and he says, how much did that cost me? And he said, well, it was about $800. And he's going, and he just got redder, and he says, I wanted a $50 mop sink. And that was just one of many situations that I found over time where the dentists weren't being listened to, and things were just being done because that's the way they've always done them. And I'm going, okay, so there's a better process. So dentists need some help. And I'm going, okay, so by the time I got to work that morning, I said, I'm going to specialize in dentists. My name is Denco Dental Construction, and I'm real simple. Den stands for construction, dental, and Co stands for construction, so Denco. And then off from that, I took off, and really the next thing I did is I went and took 8 dentists to lunch. And I sought out successful dentists that I had done work for, ones that really, you could tell they're different. They're like yourself, that have that extra drive in them, the ones that really know what they're doing. And I asked them pointed questions. What did I do well? What could I have done better? What should I do now? And then just kept growing from there.
That is so amazing. It just made me think of so many things. Like there's kids that are coming out of AT still where you lecture, and Midwestern where you're like, what percent of your business is Arizona?
99%.
Okay, but if someone's listening to you and wants you to do a job in another state, I mean, will you do that, or is that a no?
No. And the reason being is quality of life. And that's the reason I wrote the book.
Nice.
I wrote the book to be able to share it. When I wrote the first book with the idea of sharing with dentists, because they can go anywhere in the world these days, and just trying to give them some basic foundational steps to help them make those good choices, and so and save them money, time, and
so listen, kids, to what he said. First of all, that means so much too. First thing he did is, instead of building everything from a pyramid to a canoe, he specialized in dentistry. So many dentists I've known over the last 30 years, their sister was an accountant. She was clueless. She didn't really know what to do. And he convinced her, just only do dental CPA accounting. Oh, my God. Now they're the most valuable accounting in town because they know all of this dental stuff. You're at AT still, and you don't want to go to specialty school because, when I was little, the endodontist, the greatest endodontist in the world, there wasn't even the endo specialty. They just had practice limited to endo. And then they started endo school, and first it was 1 year. And then, of course, the university thought, well, how can we screw these kids more? And they expanded that to 2 years. And now they're trying to make endo school the 3-year program. I mean, I don't know why they, just don't make it a 20-year program so that the instructions never have to work. But some dentists would go to a small town, and I'm thinking of one in particular in Albuquerque, where there were 8 dentists. And he took the 8 dentists, and he said, I don't want to go to endo school, but I love endo. I just want to do practice limited endo. If I could get half of you 8 to give me all your endo, and I promise I won't do anything else. And that's how the endodontist and the pedodontist, that's how they used to get started back then. So knowing your market, specializing, it's so great. And it's such an honor when someone like Steve Anderson, by the way, Steve, I don't know if you've ever thought of this before, but there's another Steve Anderson that I've done a podcast with. And when you Google Steve Anderson dentistry, it's always 2 Steves come up. But the other Steve has
Is he handsome too?
He is a handsome devil. And you're from Iowa. He's when I first met Steve Anderson, he was in Texas. I think he moved back. I think he moved to Utah, but he goes by Stephen J. Anderson. So just don't mix up podcasts. Do you just, since he's Stephen J., do you just want to be Steve Anderson, or do you want to start using your middle name, middle initial?
Whatever works. I go by Steve Anderson, but it's Stephen D. Anderson.
It's Stephen D. Okay, I think it's a big pet peeve I have in Dental Town because I got 275,000 registered dentists, and some names that you'll put in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like a first, middle initial, and a last name, and there's like 9 of them. It's like, are you kidding me? There's 9 dentists that had the first.
First house we bought next door was Steve Anderson.
Oh, my God. That is funny. So you'll go on the record to Mama, don't name your boy Steve Anderson. Is that a remember that song when we were little? Don't name your kid Joe, or what was it?
Sue.
Sue, yeah. Who sang that? Was that Elvis or
Johnny Cash?
Johnny Cash. Yeah, don't name your kid Sue. Yeah, I was looking at that, and
ourselves here, guy.
I don't think you can go any much longer as Steve Anderson. That is a very, very popular name. So staying back on the deal, let's see where I was on this. Right now during the pandemic, we're 5 months in the pandemic. If you were going to do a a walk-in inspection on 10 dental offices in Phoenix, what would you say is the low-hanging fruit that they didn't get yet? Like, you guys, did you hear about this little virus thing going around? What would you say that most dentists need to get up to date on right now in Phoenix?
One, the belief in themselves. The dentists have gone to school and for years have dealt with pandemics, have dealt with viruses, HIV, all these other things, and they know the mouth well. They know, and that's one thing that I think the biggest thing that they haven't been selling themselves on is the issue is we specialize in this, guys. We're fine. Come see us. We got it covered. And they know, dentists know how to deal with, viruses and colds and all those things. And there's protocols, and they know better than myself the protocol. But the issue is just that confidence that they can give their patients just by that simple statement. We do mouths. We'll take care of it. We have this, we have this handled. It's
well said. I was not expecting that. But that was just so well said. You got to have confidence, and I remember in economics, I told the economist, I said in MBA school, one of my first arguments, and I didn't know I knew he was old, but I didn't know he was so old that he actually knew Milton Friedman. He actually saw Milton Friedman when he lectured in Salt Lake City. But anyway, I said to him, I said, well, healthcare has gone from 0% in 1% of the GDP in 1900 to 12% by 2000. And I said, it just can't keep growing by that. He goes, really? He goes, tell me more. He goes, this is all news to me. And they would build questions that really showed your cards. He said, okay, so tonight you're going to die, and the only thing that'll save you is to take this little blue pill. How much money will you give me that for your blue pill? Will you sell your house and car and give me everything you own for that blue pill, or you want to die tonight? And I said, I'd give you everything I got. And he says, well, it sounds like the economy could spend 100% on health care. He goes, you don't know the market. Mayo Brothers saw this. Mayo Brothers, yes. when they started their office, which, by the way, all the DSOs that have gone launched, they've all gone for the high volume, low margin, the McDonald's sector of the hamburger market. Yeah. Nobody has gone out for the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, the Sloan Keeter Fenering Center. No one's really gone out the high end, but it was the Mayo Brothers. They were shocked because when you brought in 80-year-old grandma with a cancer that was going to die, it was just standard that, she had a good life and take her home and here's a little jar that's part alcohol, morphine, and cocaine, or those little things. Keep her comfortable and she's going to die. And the Mayo Brothers like, okay, their family's ready to sell the farm, the tractor, everything if we can cure her. And they're like, dude, she's 80 years old and has a liver spot. And it's like, it doesn't matter. That's her decision. Is life. Everybody says how terrible life is, but there seems to be a big demand to keep living. Have you noticed that? Yes. Everybody badmouths life, and it's like, okay, so you're checking out? No, I just want to stay alive and bitch about it.
Mayo was an incredible. They also prorated their scale, and they also gave a lot. They did a lot of free healthcare too.
Yeah, and I think this COVID thing is going to change healthcare because, again, what I've told my team for 32 years, when something bad happened. I remember the first time we got Dental Town, someone hacked into us. And everybody was so mad because they knew the guy who did it and all this stuff. And they're making it all personal. I said, no, this is going to happen. I think we're lucky that the first guy who did it was our friend and is all ready to tell you how he did it. And they were so mad at wanting to, punch him in the nose. And I'm like, dude, he's a friend. He hacked. Yeah, what a gift. He hacked into Dental Town. You're embarrassed. I'm loving it because it's all free. I mean, we got one guy who loves us hacking into us and a guy, I don't be mad. And this pandemic, it's a massive amounts of challenges, but for the long run, I mean, our grandchildren are better. My 6 grandchildren are better served today by dentists manning up to HIV 40 years ago. We're better today because of HIV, and 5 years from now, we're going to be better because of SARS, and we're just going to keep. So what doesn't kill you makes you stronger in biology. So you're attacked by something. Did you die? No. Okay. Well, how did you survive and live? And how is your business now? What has your business done in the pandemic? Has it all gone from I want to remodel my practice and add 2 more operatories to just updating it for COVID-19? I mean, what's happened to you personally in your? I mean, you only do Arizona. You've done 1,000 offices. What happened to your business?
Initially, I would say 80+% of them just took the shock and go, let's see what the market's going to do. Let's see what's happening. And but a lot of them are coming back around, and we're seeing a lot of movement. We're seeing people that really understand, the ones that are back seeing patients. They're back at it full steam ahead, and some of them had their best months ever, this last few months.
And do you, I mean, I know you can't predict the future or tell me the stock market, but do you sense that with the cases rising here in Arizona that we're going to go back to a shutdown, or what is your sense right now? Where tomorrow is July 1st, which is the election's in 5 months. And 5 months ago, we didn't know there was a pandemic. So I figured this is the halftime of the shit show.
Yeah.
What are you expecting in the second half of the shit show starting in July?
From the standpoint of the politicians, who knows what they're going to come up with?
No, I don't mean the politics. I mean dentistry, us seeing patients. Because I closed down St. Patrick's Day, which is really tough because I'm Irish. And then I killed a whole bottle of Jameson that night. And then I opened it back up on Cinco de Mayo. And so I switched to margaritas and opened back up. But do you think it's going to go back to the Jameson days and closing it back down? Or do you not think so?
I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't anticipate the dental offices being shut back down.
Yeah, and I really love that article. Let me see if I can find it I posted it yesterday on Dental Town, where this guy was saying, who was it? Let me get it. But basically was saying that, dude, a dental office and a hair salon are not the same thing. Your dentist has been dealing with HIV for 40 years.
And that's key. They're prepped for it. Dentists know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just amazing. So, it's just, I mean, this is our specialty. So if it really comes out bad again, I would worry about patients not want to come back. Like in my office, like I just found out this morning that Thursday, I had a bunch of cancellations by some older people who just told us on the phone that, I don't know, I'm kind of worried. But what I noticed in Arizona is about 100% of everyone that I know personally under 30, they just think it's a joke, that you might catch the flu or whatever, and this is a grandma disease and it's wiping out nursing homes and elderly.
They just had an article just recently. They were saying that 20 to 40 range are the ones that there's probably 40, 60 percent of people that are just don't care. They're fine with it. They're not dealing with it seriously.
Well, everyone I know that is tested positive to corona is under 30. They laugh. They say, I didn't even know it. Half of them say I had to get tested at work because someone got sick, and they said, yeah, you test positive to it. I know a couple people that said, yeah, I had a runny nose for like 2 days. But this is a very different disease for the young than the elderly. So the point I'm trying to make is that in Arizona, if you have a DSO model, a PPO model, high volume, low margin, half the country isn't looking at dentistry any different. All your patients that were a third and under, 33 years and under, they I swear to God, I don't see it on their mind. Unfortunately, in dentistry, the one who needs a ton of work they're all 60, 70, 80, and they're scared to death of the office. In fact, the best marketing I've ever seen in my life, in fact, an entire DSO chain was built on it. They would go into a town and they would just advertise the home of the $99 extraction. If you need a tooth pulled, come on in, we'll do it for $99. And the whole genius of it was, do you know anybody who just needs one tooth pulled and the rest of their mouth is fine? Usually, if you need a tooth pulled, like right now, how many of your teeth need pulled today?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll meet you at the office. How many?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when someone comes in and needs this tooth pulled, yeah, they got gum disease, they got 4 quadrants or root planing, they got root canals, fillings, crowns, and it's the same thing. The older people that have the money and have the big treatment plan, they don't want to come in because they're scared. And so what I've seen reduced to that is what one of my friends did, who's probably one of the smartest dentist businessman I've never met. I don't want to embarrass him on the show, so I'll just say his first name, Craig. So what he told, when the older people told this, he thought, well, I'm going to be proactive. So you know what he did? You know those little text email things, technology, you send all your patients email? He said, look, if you're older and you have a treatment plan, but you're worried about coming in because of that, if you pay for your whole treatment plan up front, we will schedule you a time to come in, and it'll just be me, you, and the assistant, and my receptionist, Anna, and boom. I mean, and they're just like, oh, man, I'll come in if I'm the only one. And that's how he's getting his 60, 70, 80-year-olds to come in because they're worried. Now, the 30 and under, my buddy Keith, he was mad that he had to stay home for 3 days to go back to work. And I said, 3 days? You should stay home for 14 days. And he's like, not my job. We're just doing whatever we have to do, to not get in trouble. But so the younger people, and I'll tell you how much it makes sense. You got to remember, in 2012, we had the SARS virus rip through America, and it killed 38 million souls in America in 2012. But no one cared because they were pigs. And when it hit the pigs, it was the opposite. It was just killing the babies. Oh, the old pigs were fine, but you're from Iowa. I'm from Kansas. In fact, the funniest joke I ever heard was in Iowa, and it was about pigs. I was in Council Bluffs because I went to Creighton, and it was on the border between Omaha and Iowa.
Yeah, right.
And back then, you couldn't drink in Nebraska till you were 21, but you could in Iowa at 18. So we'd have to, every night, we'd have to cross the river and go into Iowa and drink. And then when you came back, there were a cop on each side. So you were kind of like a bunch of zebras going through a creek, knowing that the crocodiles were going to eat someone. And you're just driving through, saying the rosary, hoping they wouldn't pull over you. But this guy was showing me this map of where all the hogs were made in the United States. And the hog center of the world is Chicago. And you have all these black dots. And I said, wow, look at Canada. Canada, they just blacked out the whole country. I said, look at Canada. They're all pigs up there. It was just completely blacked out. And but anyway, so let me go the next deal. What was my next question for you? What do you see as the most significant challenges dentists face when building or remodeling their dental practice?
Basically, where to start, who to know, what do they do next? Basically, I see dentists sold things that they don't need. I see just the entire process of as they get ready to do something, they know they need to do something, but they don't know where to start. And that's what I address in the book, is just that whole process and finding people and professionals that they can trust and how to do that. Basically I take it as the Kool-Aid. You remember the Kool-Aid a number of years back where a certain gentleman passed around Kool-Aid and everybody drank it and they all died. And
the Jonestown, the purple Jonestown?
Yeah. So what I'm talking about is people go to seminars, people go to online, and they get sold just by how beautiful the website is, or by there's a process. Let's go for it. And I've had a number of clients come through my doors, and They tell me about the latest Kool-Aid they just drank, and they're all excited. I want my office to be just this system, this process. And I look at them and I say, I'll guarantee you that you're going to only keep about 25% of your Kool-Aid. And they said, well, how can that be? I like this. And they said, let me ask you some more pointed questions. And what's interesting is I find out is most of the programs are designed to help dentists and get their money. And it's designed to just do what they do best, is just create an office within their box and when their design. There's a little fact that most dentists don't stop and think about. Every dentist is unique. Every dentist is different. And every dentist has a different idea and a different mind's eye of what they want to do and what their future and their vision is. And that's what the book does, is it takes what's in their mind and make it reality. And that's my gift. Over the years, I realized that I have an ability to be able to listen and then apply and then take what's in the person's mind, take that vision, put it on paper, create it, and make that dream reality.
Man, that's poetry. I like your you have a YouTube video. I posted 3 of them on that thread, and I'm going to post another one. Dental Office Construction Book, the step-by-step guide by Denco Dental Construction. Your YouTube channel is Steve Anderson, Denco Dental Construction. So it's kind of a combined question is, what are the biggest surprises that you've encountered over the past couple of months? I mean, due to the pandemic, what surprised you the most? And would your book have answered that? Would that book have, if that dentist in my homie would have read that book, would he have not done something that surprised you the most? What surprised you the most in the pandemic, and would your book have prevented it?
Honestly, when the pandemic came out, I was expecting a little bit more like how dentistry responded in '08. Most dentists, a large percentage of them, took their head and stuck them in the sand. But there were some really good dentists that understood that this is just a cycle, but another opportunity to do some things different and be able to positively look at my opportunities to see what's there, because they are opportunities. And like you just mentioned with your friend, it's just about marketing different. It's just packaging different and seeing what the need is and reaching out and making that happen. And right now with this, the pandemic, the virus, I'm seeing the majority of the dentists not sticking their heads in the sand like they did in '08. They're responding differently for the most part. They're seeking out opportunities and they're looking at the bigger picture, and they're finding ways to make things happen.
I want to go back. I want to start with a mental exercise, a thought experiment. As a dentist, that when someone, like for instance, I charge $1,000 a unit for a denture, an upper lower denture in my office costs $2,000. And a lot of times they bring in a coupon and they say, well, Howard, I can go to Denture World and get the whole thing for $299. It's like, dude, I'll pay for the limo to come pick your butt up right now and drive you there. Trust me, I'd rather, I'd either eat rocks than do a denture for $299. And the thing is, my buddy over at Denture World, he has it down to 3 steps. He has a mush bite, he's got a lab man, and he just is really good. And I came up with my 50 times a year method that if you get into, say, implants, and you don't place 1 implant a week, 50 weeks a year, you're never entered the profit zone on implants, and you're not good. Oh. You had to buy a $100,000 CBCT. You had to go to the Falkland Islands to learn how to use it. You had to buy all this stuff. Furthermore, if you needed an implant, would you like to go to some guy that places 1 implant a year, or would you like to go to the guy who places 1 implant a day? So you're never reach critical mass. And here I still do like a denture, every 3 or 4 months, where at Denture World, they're doing 10 a day. I guarantee you he's better. And I'm not gonna get into that same money. But I noticed when it comes down to an office remodel, most of the dentists are gonna get 3 bids, and of course go to the lowest bid. And I'm like, are you sure that's a good idea? I know everybody around here says that. Myself included, that that if they have you do it, they're probably going to save 100 grand. So
Yes.
so why does everybody think you saved them 100 grand? It's all you do. Is it kind of like denture world, where since this is all you do, you just know how to do it faster, easier, better, lower cost, or
Well, it's I had mentioned before we went on the air that like one of my employees has been with me 26 years, and the majority of my employees have been with me quite a while. And the idea is being able to understand and know how to deal with emergencies. Had a call from a doctor Sunday morning. His office, he walked in and had 4 inches of water in it. And be able to respond to that and be able to put the right people in there and get it done as quickly as possible, so he's back up and running and seeing patients as quickly as possible.
but
And
why did you do that? Why didn't you just drive by, shoot him, and put him out of his misery, and just like solve that? Why didn't you just take him out?
he was an optimist.
He was an optimist. Okay. So when my homies say that you saved him 100 grand, what do you think is the top 3 reasons of why you saved them money, as opposed to someone who really doesn't know what they're doing in dentistry? They're not specialized in doing dentistry 1,000 times in the last 3 decades. What are the top 3 over budget blowers?
Time is a big one. I've seen doctors say, "Oh, I can handle this myself. I can do it," and 7 months later, I've had,
Nice.
I think of a doctor trying to save money. One comes to mind where he had a beautiful bank building, and to save $5,000, he went with another architect that didn't know what they're doing. Well, the long story short was, by the time it was all said and done, and he was going to save $12,000 on construction costs. Well, the bottom line is he got done literally 6 months later, after that he had projected, and he ended up paying 5 months of 150% lease at his current place because he wasn't moved out on time. And then on top of that, he ended up losing all those potential people that he would have had in the space. Plus, he ended up having to make the office smaller than he planned because he didn't do his research and the architect didn't advise him correctly. And he was not able to build the square footage and build it out to what he had hoped for. And then he found out that the parking ratio, he didn't have parking there. He just thought because it's sitting in a big parking lot that all that parking's mine. And come to find out, he had literally half the parking spaces that he thought he had. So he had a delay at the city for an extra couple months in getting with cross assignment of parking. And that's basically, it's not the things that I see that cost dentists money is not hiring accountable professionals. And what I mean that is, accountable professionals are ones that really take the time to really understand who they are and are about you and making sure that it's about your dream rather than your wallet. And then they're recommending the same type of professionals that whether it's an architect, contractor, equipment person, and so on, they're hiring the same like-minded people. And then on top of that is hiring a dental-minded real estate broker. One of the biggest mistakes I see is, oh, my brother or my sister or my uncle is a realtor and they sell homes and they'll help me get the space. And I've seen tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, left on the table in lost tenant improvement dollars that the owner of the building would have been able to give them, or that they also would have, it cost them more in rent. So that's, and the thing that gets me about that is people will choose someone that's not a professional when they could hire the best for nothing. And it blows my mind. That is one trade secret that people ignore is they can go out and find the best broker to represent them, and it doesn't cost them anything because it's paid for the seller side or the leaser side. And then another thing that I see that costs dentists drastically is the issue of not understanding themselves. The single biggest thing I see is they don't understand not only their who they are, what's important to them, but they turn a project over without anybody asking those questions. So if you have a picture and it's not a clear picture, you'll get exactly what you want. It's just a really muddied mess that's going to cost you a lot of extra. And every time you walk in there, there's something else you're adding because someone hasn't helped you through the entire process to make sure that you really understand what's important to you, so it can be put on paper, so it can be designed, so it's built at the height of who you are. And that's the key, is building an office to the height of who you are and what's important to you. And people say, well, that means everybody has to build an expensive office? The key there is no. I have an office that we did in Phoenix a few years back, and it was the lowest, least expensive tenant improvement I ever did, and he was at the peak of who he was. How can that be? Everybody has a different level of requirements, and what I've found is you build the level of who you are. Well, they were in a Hispanic area. He was Hispanic, and it was a low-income area, and he built it for exactly the neighborhood, and he knocked it dead. And the same thing goes for, if you overbuild an office, that's another thing, a big mistake I see is sometimes turning over the keys to an architect and let the architect run wild. And I've seen dentists literally walk into their space and go, oh my God, what did I do? This isn't me. And what happens is just the opposite of what they were expecting. Their productivity, their sales, everything drops because now they're embarrassed for the space that they're going into. So it's interesting. You do it right. The national average is like 34% over doing it for 2 years growth just by going from one office to your new office, your dream office. It's all about you. And I've had offices that we finished that have exceeded 40, 50% growth just by moving into an office that better represents them, and they haven't had time to even advertise.
Wow. And even Aristotle's most famous quote is, I'm going to get it right, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom.
Yeah, that's in my book.
That's in your book?
Yes.
And it's kind of funny, but these times where people just don't realize when I remember Spartan versus Athens. Spartan, Spartan. So Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, if you want to know their order. But Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle were massively against women. I mean, they literally thought they were chattel. They're animals. And it's like, well, you don't throw out Aristotle because he wasn't perfect. You know what I mean? I have 4 kids, and one of them told me that I wasn't perfect. I mean, I don't know if it's I don't know what he was talking about, but Aristotle. So you said time. You said know yourself. The top 3 things: time, know yourself, and what was the third?
Dental-minded broker.
Was that number 1? Dental-minded broker.
They can be interchangeable. It depends on the situation.
But dental-minded broker, and then time of the project.
Yeah.
And then know yourself.
Understand yourself. And the other one that's really important is accountable professionals that really understand you.
Nice. I want to go through. I want to go through some of my my things I've seen. Like, I was talking to a guy the other day when I was gassing my car, and he's a tileman, and he's only done tile for about as long as I have, like 30 years. He's only done tile. And I said, what's been your secret? He's a one-man show. He doesn't have any employees. He just has a truck. He does tile. I said, what's your selling proposition? Why you been by yourself, your own truck, and being able to stay competitive and crushing it for 30 years? He said, because most people, he only does commercial. So like a Subway will call you up and you'll say, okay, yeah, we'll come in, but you need to close down the restaurant for 3 days and we'll do this. And he just starts with, well, I'm not closing you down, so what are your hours? And so he works third shift. When he's doing a tile job, he shows up when they close, works till they open. I remember, I mean, that's pretty interesting. So if you went with the lowest bidder and they close your dental office down for a week, and your office has 10,000 a week, well, that's very different than if I got another bidder who said I'll do it evenings and weekends. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's that's time is money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then I got to tell you the other thing. So then I always like the inverse. Like, if you really sell me on the reason I should get a diesel truck, well, I don't even trust you until you can just as passionately sell me on why I need a gasoline truck. And it's the easiest red flag. I mean, look at math. It starts with addition followed by the inversion of subtraction. And then when you learn that, they move you to multiplication followed by the inversion of division. So if someone knows how to add and they never even thought about subtraction, they don't know addition. If someone doesn't know division, they don't know multiplication. So if you just swear that I'm to be the happiest guy with a diesel instead of a gas, well, passionately sell me on gas. And then they don't have anything to say, which really shows they don't know anything. So I want to go to the negative, and I'll even go to you. What is the negative, the negative thing about you in all of Arizona for 30 years? Everybody that I know would say the same thing. Oh my God, I don't know what I was thinking. I built 4 ops. Looking back, I should have gone 6. I don't know one dentist. I don't know one who had to do it all over again, would have made his office bigger with more operatories. But then what is the number one complaint about it on Dental Town? It's like, oh, well, you built a Taj Mahal. So, man, so everybody's saying, well, he built too big. You hear that all the time. And then every dentist that I know personally, which just means they're an alcoholic, that's all that means when I say I know them personally, is, gosh, I wish I'd have gone bigger. And I fought that because my first office was 5 years rented, 4 operatories, and I thought, that's really all I need. But I thought to myself, but it's everyone's regret. So when in '94, when I built mine, I bought the pad, building up, I went to 8. And I never really needed all 8. So it's a tough question. So if everyone's regret is, man, why did I have this little break room? I should have had a bigger break room. I should have had a bathroom in my private office. So if everyone's regret is it's too small, but everybody's complaint is, well, that idiot built a Taj Mahal, how do you balance between the number one regret being I should have gone bigger and the number one regret being I built too big of a Taj Mahal? How do you find the middle?
Going to the first question, who are you? What's important to you? What are you about? What are your long-term goals? And that's all addressed in my first chapter, because that's really, you build from that. And just like, your dental, when someone come in and you have a patient come in, it's about doing an assessment. That's what we do. And I've had dentists come to me and say, okay, I've had these plans for a couple months. I've already got them permitted. I had this literally happen. And he says, I'm ready to go, Steve, let's go. And I took the plans and set them aside, and I said, tell me a few things about yourself. And I asked some pointed questions, and I had to walk through their office, and I pointed out, and I said, your operatories look pretty tight. Well, yeah, they have been for 10 years, and they got a 6-foot hallway behind it. And I said, so why aren't you addressing that? Well, that's a good idea. And then went through and found some other issues, and found that then we rolled out the plans, and I looked at him and I said, so what do you think? And he says, that doesn't meet my needs. And what it really boils down to is people aren't asking the right questions. Just to say I need more ops, just to say I need more things, they really first got to understand themselves. Because I have some dentists that come to me. I had one that said, Steve, I found a 6,000 square foot building. I'm ready to go. And I went down and met with him, and he was in 1,800 square feet. And about after 15 minutes into it, I go, cancel your appointment with the realtor, and you should not do this. And he said, but Steve, it's a beautiful building. It's a great location. And I said, it'll kill you. It'll put you out of business. You don't have the mindset. You don't have the foundation to do something like that. And it's really about understanding the dentist. And that's what we go through is first understand who you are, what's important to you, and be able to take all that and put it together. And there are many situations, yeah, more ops are better, but some can't handle it. We have some doctors that I sit down with, and at the end of the conversation, they go, you're right, Steve. It's better that I just go work for a DSO or go work for someone else and collect a nice check because I'm not meant to be an owner. And those are the questions that don't get asked. Instead, they go through the process of building an office and they suffer the issue of having to file bankruptcy or the issue of being able to barely make it. And then after going through a lot of stress personally and divorce and all the other things, they end up selling their practice at cents on the dollar. It's really about understanding yourself.
That is so profound. I mean, that this is what some guy tells you after 30 years. I mean, that was deep. If you're under 30, you might want to hit the rewind on that. When dentists just go, I mean, they want a simple remodel. They want to remodel. What do you think when you look at that, when it's all done and said, that the dentist didn't get? What do you think is the most misunderstanding? We all have misunderstandings with patients. What do you think when you go in and you do some remodel? What do you think is the biggest misunderstanding that the dentist didn't get? Because you do remodels all day long for 30 years. He only does a remodel every 10 years. What would you say was the biggest misunderstanding or regret?
From me to them or them to, I'm not understanding.
Just the remodel process. Like, they're going to go through the process.
I really don't have any issues. We try to deal with that all up front, and really the speaking to dentists that have had bad experiences, it's always about not understanding time, not being clear about expectations, not understanding that are you going to work during the process, or talking to them about if you're remodeling, are there any other options? And they go, well, what other options? I work right here in my office. I don't see anything else. There are no other options, but there are. Right next door, they have a specialist that sees patients twice a week. Maybe they can go in there and we can blow this out in a couple of weeks and, save them money, time, effort. It's just about taking a step back always and look at the bigger picture.
So you have coined the phrase, the fist of success. Could you explain that without punching me in the eye?
I love this. I came up with this a while back, and one thing that I was trying to put a handle on what it was that I was sensing from dentists that would keep them from being successful. Some have more issues than others, but some would get right into the project and they would end up starting and they get into it, but they hadn't done their homework, and so it delays the project or it puts it off or what have you. And the bottom line is so I'm going, it's really like meeting someone like this, because they have these barriers up and they don't realize it. Some of it's just some issues that they haven't dealt with themselves. But the bottom line is there's a fist of success. And it goes like this. Basically, you take a fist and it's closed and it's not open. It's not open to receive good things. So what's interesting is the first one is the FICO score. Simple thing, but what's so interesting is when you take the FICO score, and it used to be 680 and above, now I think it's more like the low 700s for most of the dental professional lenders. And what's interesting is you take that FICO score and you work on it and really work hard to make sure that you keep it up. So why? You want to be a viable candidate for a loan. Second is it's intelligent spending. What's interesting is What I mean by that is some dentists have been living at the poverty level thinking, okay, I'm going to keep things down. But all of a sudden they get their first job and they're making some really good money that all of a sudden they get their first checks and go, wow, I need to go buy the Porsche. I need to go buy the big house. I need to go. What's interesting is you do it just the opposite. If you spend less, save some money, ideally maybe $40,000, $50,000, just save it and then work on your dream, because your dream's going to feed your future. But the biggest thing that I see is they don't take time to have intelligent spending. And so instead, what they end up with is they have these big things, whereas if they would have done the loan on their office first, the next day they literally can go out and buy the big things, because some of these lending institutions will not even put on your credit score the big note that you just signed for $500,000 on the credit report, unlike buying a big house, unlike buying a car, and so on. The third thing is satisfy your passion. We've talked about a little bit, Dr. Fran, in this podcast about
Howard, please.
Okay, Howard. Okay. So we talked, Howard, about
3 was what?
3 is satisfy your passion.
Okay.
And what I mean is do what you do and do it extremely well. We talked about some of those dentists shouldn't be dentists because they're in it for the money. Dentists should be in it for doing dentistry because they love the relationships. They love to do with their hands. They love to be technical. And what happens is when you have that passion, it just feeds everything. Everything else comes, and it leads right into number 4, which is time for relationships. It's really, when you have time for relationships, that means it's not only your family and your loved ones, but also it's time for your patients. Some doctors miss the biggest selling point that they have. The biggest selling point is themselves and giving them a few minutes and listening to their patients. And that's one thing that they don't do very well, is they don't listen. And so basically a friend of mine said, I had a good friend, Dr. Rick Jacoby, we would do a joint session over at AT Stills, and he was teaching dentists how to sell dentistry. And I loved it. When he was done, the students all looked at each other and they say, they can't be that easy. And he says, well, yes, it is. It's really about taking care of your patient. And he said, basically, if you put people first, money will come. You will succeed. And then, so we got 4. The 5th one is surrounding yourself with accountable, qualified professionals. And so what I see in the industry right now is so many people out there are about the bottom line. The professionals that are out there to help dentists, many of them are about money, and really it's no different than time for relationships, and understanding that if you put people first, if they put dentists first, and money comes. Really take care of the dentist, give them options. And so it's about accountable people that will really make a difference for you and help you down the road in the long run, really make it work for you. And it's just fun. So interesting is what happens now. Look at your hand. All of a sudden it's open, and it's open to receive all those things, because what you have is now you got a good foundation. And that good foundation is lenders are going to love you because you got a great FICO score, you got money in the bank, you haven't done any major purchases, you're going to get a loan, and you satisfied your passion, and they can see that passion because you're going to do those extra little things to make it work, because owning your own business is work, wouldn't you say, Howard?
Absolutely.
But in order to have that drive to do what you do, you have to love what you do. And it's really, and then you take and put all those together, you're successful. And it's such a simple premise.
I agree. I'm just taking profound notes. I mean, it's an amazing podcast when you're sitting there taking notes.
Well, I'll shoot a little excerpt from my book, and I'll shoot it over to you.
Well, no, I'd rather you post it on Dental Town.
I will.
I think that's better. So the fist of success, what I wrote down is finger one, FICA score should be 700 and above for dental professional lenders, intelligent spending, satisfy your passion, time for relationships. You said family and friends. I assume it meant tender and match. Surrounding yourself with qualified professionals. Did I miss anything?
No, no. That's
And
that's
and and relationships. I mean, relationships are complex. I mean, my assistant, the other day she said, Howard, have you listened to one word I said? And I replied, well, that's a weird way to start a conversation. Um, but so I'm trying to think. My gosh, I can't believe we went well over an hour. I'm trying to think if I'm missing. Was there anything that you or your son Eric thought I was going to talk about today that I didn't get to?
uh, no. It's basically I wasn't expecting to take up an hour and a half of your time. I've enjoyed this, and it's been a privilege. I've been an admirer of what you've created over the years, and I just really count it an honor to be able to join you today.
Well, hey, dude, you did my dental office. It's an honor that you came on the show. It's I love your deal, your extras. By the way, I don't know if I ever told you this. I don't remember everything we talked about, but so my four boys, they're on their mom's side, their two uncles are in construction. They got a construction company called Key Construction, and it was amazing. They one went into it before he graduated from college because he always wanted to say that he never had a college degree, but his dad and mom made him go to college, so his rebellion he dropped out one semester before graduation and is so proud that he doesn't have a college degree. But but when they were up there studying business, they went into construction. And you know why they went into construction? They
What?
said, "My God, it's just a legendary industry that no one's going to do what they say. No one's going to stand behind their work. There'll be 100 delays." And they just looked at it. They said, "Man, when you're competing with Fortune 500 companies, they do the basic level of service." He goes, they went into construction in Kansas because they're like, "Man, this reputation is so bad. If we just show up to work on time."
Yeah.
And we don't have employee turnover. And how many of your employees have been with you for? I mean, you've got a bunch of people been with you forever. My Lori, she just celebrated 22 years with me yesterday. Of course, she's in rehab because she's been with me for 22 years. So she had to call me from the Betty Ford Center in Atlanta. I'm just kidding. It was in Scottsdale. And so the bottom line is, my gosh. When you hear like when people are bad mouthing a DSO, I mean the number one awesome thing they have is they're always going to have the best location, the best marketing. They're going to have the best everything, and then where they're going to be the weakest is their average doctor is only going to be with them a year or so. Everybody knows that. I mean, I've been in Arizona 32 years, and people usually come back and they say, in fact, I lost my uncle to Aspen. And I told Bob Fontana when he was on the show, I said, you got my uncle. And why? Because he has an on-site denture lab, so he can go in there and get a reline. He can get anything done while he waits. Well, I don't have that. I mean, I'm the first person to raise my hand and say, "Hey, Bob Fontana, you're a better man than me. You have a lab man in your premise at all times. I don't." But the problem is that most of the patients come in and say, "You know what? I went in there, lovely doctor. They said I needed this dental work, and I went back to have it done, and the doctor's not even there anymore." So
Yeah.
my last question to you is, we've gone over time. You've done a lot of remodels. You're in the state that has the most dental DSO penetration. 18% of the 6,500 dentists in Arizona work for a DSO. And when you look at that long tail, the last 5 states, they're not even at 1% penetration. And then our Governor Ducey said, which I was all supportive, I don't like artificial restrictions and regulations. But basically, I hate the government. I mean, come on, the mob. The U.S. government is no different than the Sopranos. But our mobster governor said, "Hey, if you're licensed to be a nurse or a dentist or whatever in another state, you're good here."
Yeah.
So this is ground zero for DSO. And I was wondering, have you been doing much work with DSOs, remodels, From your perspective of 30,000 feet for 30 years of doing this, what does the DSO market look like to you in Arizona, and how is it different than the old traditional model?
Wow, that's loaded. Um, Short version is great opportunity for dentists. And the reason I say that is I have numerous clients that come out of DSOs and say, I've had enough and it's time to move on. So it's great for construction because they're tired of what they see and what they don't see, and how patients aren't taken care of, and the issues of problems that people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing at the DSOs. That's not across the board. There are some good DSOs, but a lot of times we even recommend that they build a dental office right next to them. I said, give them an option, give them a second opinion. And what's interesting is they'll find that, and that's where those 5 keys come into mind, is about showing that you have a relationship, showing them that you're accountable, showing them that you've made good choices, showing them that you're about giving them options to help their success and their care. And so I've done work for DSOs, and it's they have their place, and actually a lot of students go there, and it's a great learning place. And back to that little note thing that I say is, learn, what do you want to keep from this? We go to a seminar, going to work for a DSO is no different. You can learn some really great things by going to work for them. Things that work, things that don't work, things that you can do better. And, anytime you have an opportunity to work for someone else, there's always something to gain and learn from it.
Very profound. And and I like to tell the dentist another thing on the DSO. When I hear DSO bashing, number one, it usually comes from a dark, bad place of jealousy and stupidity and all that stuff. Number one, let's look at the deal. When last month, when 6,000 kids that I don't want to hire, I've had my share of these kids that come out of school. I mean, I'm sorry, when you've only done 15 fillings in your life, the 16th one isn't very good. I'll take a retiring dentist. My favorite dentist that I've had for the years, that stay with me the longest, that always stay 10 plus years, is their kids just went off to college. They're all done, but they're in frozen north, Minnesota, and they want to come to Arizona, but they already did their own office thing, and they already did all that. They just want to be an employee, but they got 25 years experience with people skills, and they're just a cash cow. Every time I get a kid out of school, like today, I'm having one of my friends redo an implant case that some kid placed, and I of course paid that guy 25% of the case. Now I'm paying the whole case to be redone, and whenever an associate leaves, you're gonna, if they're within 4 years of graduation, you're gonna have to pay periodontists and oral surgeons to redo at least a third of their implant cases. And now a lot of the DSOs in Arizona are like, the trend towards DSO is to stop the general dentist from doing molar root canals and placing implants. Because why would you not have a periodontist or an oral surgeon that's placed 5,000 implants come in and do your implants, then sending some kid to some implant school, and then he places 5, and then his employee turnover, and he's gone next year, and then over the next 2 or 3 years, half of them fail. So the the insurance, which I don't know what it is about insurance companies. I try so hard to build a transparent, open relationship with the whole industry sector, but my dental insurance friends, they hardly they won't go public with anything. If you get them drunk at a bar, they'll show you that when endodontists do 1 million root canals in 5 years, 5% of those teeth are extracted. But when a general dentist does a root canal in 5 years, 10% are extracted. So we're only talking about 5%. So the endodontists, their mistake is they didn't realize it was cracked, fractured, and it was hopeless. So they were too optimistic on a failed tooth. But it just comes down to 5%, 1 out of 20. That's the difference between an endodontist and a specialist. Well, you can just get rid of 5% of your failures if you have an endodontist come in and do the molar root canals, or a periodontist, But I don't want these kids out of schools, but the DSOs take them. I mean, when I was little, the only person that would take you out of school was the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Public Health Service, Indian Public Health Service, and everybody else is go out there and learn yourself, figure yourself out, and come back to me after a couple of years. Well, come on, dude. You're an old man, and the only people giving you that opportunity are the DSOs, so God bless them for that, love them for that. Number two is when you go to need a liquidity event and want to sell your practice, who's the only people that'll walk in your office, pull out their checkbook, and just write you a check for $3 million cash? It's a big, heavily funded DSO. And the third, and there's a difference between men and women, and I know that sounds horrible to say, but I cannot tell you, in this town, I know a dozen women that what they love the most about a DSO is their world was rocked by a divorce. The next thing they found out, they're a single parent with 1, 2, or 3 kids. And at that time in their life, they just wanted a job. And it was the best thing that ever happened to them, is that they just had a place to work where they can leave at 5 o'clock, and they don't care if that flood you started with a flood with 4 inches of water. Well, my girls that work at these DSOs, they don't care. The first thing they think is, good, can I stay home today, because Billy's got he's got a ball game. And so and in a country of 325 million people, look at the markets for a car. You could have a moped, a motorcycle, a small 2-seater, 4-seater truck, diesel, gas. You could drive look at housing. You could live in your car, a fifth wheel, a trailer, a double wide, a studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bed, all the way to a 9-bedroom house. Yeah. So why does anybody think that healthcare or dentistry would be one market? Yeah. I've never seen. Can you even think of anything where one market would satisfy everyone?
And it just goes to show, just everything you just said, is everybody's different. Every dentist is different, but also they have every patient has different needs. And also DSOs have morphed over the last few years, and there's some really neat configurations that they have on the DSOs now, in which actually it's a win-win for the dentist. I see established dentists coming into some of them and doing extremely well and just blow their socks off. So there's just lots of opportunities, and like you said, people tend to make, by ignorance, they'll make a choice, and rather than finding out what's truly out there.
And one last thing, I'll just end on one last thing, because you're a deep guy, and I can tell you're deep. So I'm going to share my one deep thought, and that is, you're never going to meet a human that's just one thing. You can be the best mom in the world, but still have maybe a drinking problem, or you could be the best husband in the world, but have a spending problem. You could be a great dentist. So people are complex. They might have 1, 2, or 3 shining stars about them, but there might be something that's not right about them too. So humans are so complex. Patients are so complex. The whole game of life is the people business. And if you can figure out your team so you don't have turnover with your team, then they're going to make relationships with your patients, and then you're not going to have all the impatient turnover. So if you can't keep your spouse, and you can't keep your team, and you can't keep your patient, it all just means that across the board you're not good at people. Yep. If you start to learn yourself, like Aristotle, said, and if you learn yourself and you learn people and you lower your expectations, that it just is what it is. I know what I was telling my friend the other day. I said, every time you talk about your mother, it's kind of like that she's a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, and you're screaming at her because she won't go running with you. I don't think your mom is even capable. She's not capable of even understanding what you are and everything, So people are they're complex. They're wild animals. Know yourself, know your team, and the first red flags are you have a revolving door. Like if I was coaching at a DSO, I would just go, well, why did she leave? I mean, when I'm talking to dentists, the number one reason they leave the DSO, the number one reason that they've told me personally, is because they're young, they're trying to learn how to do a molar endo, and every time they go to work, they got a different dental assistant. It's from some temp agency, and they're like, man, I can't do my best work with a dental assistant that I just met 5 minutes ago. You know what I mean? I'd like some consistency. It's kind of like when you'd watch those basketball games and you know, they'd look one way and pass it behind their back, clear across the other down. They're like, oh, how does he have eyes on the back of his head? How the hell did he do that? Well, they did that because these two boys have been playing together full court for years, and they just know where they're at. So I would just tell DSOs that you're getting an A in marketing, location, all that kind of stuff. Just figure out the employee turnover thing. That's all you got to do. But, hey, we're out of time. I got to get back to work. Thank you so much for all you. Thank you for doing my office, first of all. Thank you for writing a second book. Knowledge has no value if it's not transferable. So thanks for taking what you learned and making it in a transferable package that will that you can give to someone else through space and time. I think that's a beautiful thing. Thanks for all you've done. Thanks for coming on the show. If you ever want to come back on the show, maybe after the pandemic, you can come in person.
Hey,
and we can actually shake hands and touch each other without dying. So after the pandemic, come in the studio and we'll do it again.
I will.
All right. And tell your son Eric I said hello. That's my oldest son's name too, Eric. So I'll never forget that. All right. Have a great day.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.